Environmental Protection Agency. It's Mother Nature's premier federal defender, but it appears that the EPA has not been defending every part of Mother Nature equally. The agency has a civil rights office, and its sole mission is to ensure that the places that get EPA funding not act in a discriminatory manner. In its 22-year history, however, the office has never once made a formal finding of a civil rights violation. That's according to an investigation by NBC News and the Center for Public Integrity. Joining me now to discuss what appears to be environmental justice denied is Amber Payne, the managing editor of NBC BLK, and Kristen Lombardi, a senior writer at the Center for Public Integrity. Now, Kristen, I want to go to you first because you wrote this piece.
Yes.
Were you surprised by what you found?
I have to say it's pretty shocking that in the history of the EPA accepting environmental discrimination complaints, which is what we looked at, it's never once found a violation. I mean, most people would think at least once you find a formal violation. Yeah. Laws are broken, right? And so, yeah, it was pretty amazing that in and of itself. But then when you looked at the layers, what we did was we examined 15 years worth of complaints filed by communities of color with the EPA's Office of Civil Rights and how the office responded. And we found that 95% of the time, in 265 cases that we looked at, 95% of the time, the office rejected or dismissed complaints, most of the time without pursuing any kind of investigation.
So they're not even checking it out? They're out of hand dismissing it?
Most of the time, wow. They are rejecting them outright on procedural grounds. They have certain requirements that you have to fulfill in order for the agency to investigate. Some of them are very simple, like the complaint must be in writing. Some of them are subjective, and the agency has the ability to waive them, and that includes complaints that must be filed within a 180-day time frame of the alleged discrimination. Now, if the EPA thought that the complaint had legitimacy and that there was potential discrimination going on, but a complaint was filed, longer than 180 days, they could waive that requirement and investigate.
Now, Amber, I think for many viewers, this is the first time they've thought about an environmental issue and the civil rights issue in the same moment. Maybe we could talk about a case study which brings it together. You were in Uniontown recently, which is in Alabama. Tell us about what you found.
Yeah. Well, Uniontown, it's about 30 miles from Selma. So that's your place mark where they just celebrated, 50 years since Bloody Sunday. So it's a little ironic that just miles down the road, the sister neighborhood is having this fight. They're calling it the modern day environmental or civil rights movement, is environmental justice. It's about quality of life for these people. So when we went to Uniontown, it's about 2,500 people in this town. It's considered the Black Belt of Alabama. Got a lot of working class families. It once was a booming town, and now it's really been reduced. And so there are layers of issues there. There was this landfill that took in this coal ash, and I was able to, in Kingston, Tennessee in 2008, there's a big containment pond of coal ash that spilled, billions of gallons, and I was actually able to go and cover that and report on it. And I wondered, where did this all go? And it actually ended up in Uniontown, Alabama, and it was one of the sources of this complaint.
So the people who are citing this coal ash, they are looking presumably at where it can be environmentally contained in a safe way that meets their standards. But it's not random where they end up, right? It seems that if it's a white neighborhood or a rich neighborhood, they're not going to have a fight there to try to put it in someone's backyard because they think they might lose. The people there have resources and they have political support. But you go to a place like Uniontown, and they would never say this, but perhaps not coincidentally, the people don't have the same political support. They don't have the same resources.
Yeah. The people really feel like they use this phrase, they were sold out by their officials, for the money that the town received to take this in and to have the landfill there. They just feel like there's nobody looking out for them. And they discussed a lot of their health problems that they've had, quality of life problems, and just layers of bureaucracy paired with layers of other environmental issues in the town. There's a cheese plant that has an odor that it burns your eyes. There are sewage spray fields, and it's a very antiquated system where they're literally spraying it out in a field. That also compounds the problem. And so, the people of Uniontown have been fighting for this. They don't really feel like they have the support of their local officials, state officials, or the EPA.
So, Kristen, the people of Uniontown, they go to the EPA and they ask for help. And what does the EPA say about this case, but also in general? What's its position in response to your reporting? Does it say we're looking into it, we admit we're not doing enough?
Well, in so many words, it admits it's not doing enough. We did interview the current director of the Civil Rights Office, Velveeta Golightly Howe, and she
That is an awesome name, by the way.
Yeah.
One must note that.
And she would not talk about past cases. She started to head the office in February 2014. You might consider that something of a cop-out, but she did say, it's clear we've had problems processing these complaints. One of the really interesting things that we found, we spoke with a lot of former EPA officials, both at the higher level who had close contact with this office and people who used to be investigators. And they said one of the biggest problems plaguing this office is that the agency, top-down, agency-wide, across programs, has no idea what environmental discrimination looks like. They don't know how to define it legally. They don't know how it meshes with environmental standards, and they don't know how to identify it on the ground. So investigators, they get out in the field, if they go to the field, and they don't know what they're looking for, and that's part of the problem. One of the first things that has to happen in terms of turning this agency around, this office around and making it more effective is having some kind of consensus from the top down on this question of environmental discrimination. And also, what are you going to allow the office to do about it? Because investigators have told us that they often, bump up against other programs if they start poking their noses into those programs, saying, this case, there's discrimination. It seems to suggest discrimination.
Yeah.
One of the really interesting things about Uniontown is that EPA's Atlanta office, the Region 4 office, approved the disposal of coal ash in Arrowhead Landfill, which is the name of the landfill. And they did that for technical reasons. And, many of the advocates that we talked with said, if the agency had instilled this culture of civil rights and held up the Civil Rights Act as an act that the agency has to enforce just as much as environmental laws, then maybe that decision might have considered civil rights as well as technical reasons. But now the office is in a place where, in order to maybe rule in favor of the residents, it might have to conflict with the EPA region's decision in terms of dumping coal ash there.
So, okay. Amber, I want to try to channel the Republican commentators that seem to drop in on every environmental article I've ever done. They would say this is an issue of poverty, not skin color, right? These people lack power because they don't have money. But I suppose there's probably pretty good history connecting skin color with poverty.
I think, yeah, there's a pretty good history of that. And I mean, there have been many studies about the number and the percentage of power plants, landfills, hazardous spaces around the country that are disproportionately in African American, black and brown neighborhoods. So when it comes to the civil rights movement, I think a lot of these activists we spoke with are really pushing for this to be the next step in justice, environmental justice, and having these people's voices heard. We met with this, there's this local group, the Black Belt Citizens Group is their name, and we spoke to them. Both of us met them, spoke to them in our piece, and they're at city council meetings. They're doing their best to write the Alabama Department of Emergency Management. But there are all these layers that they can't get through. That poverty. I mean, you call and you want to place a complaint, and they're told, well, we need that in writing, and we need you to submit that and get on your computer.
Right.
Some of them don't have a computer.
Right.
So there are these barriers that are preventing them from actually even voicing their problems.
So, I mean, this is a huge landfill. The coal ash is already there. Presumably, they're not going to just pick this thing up and move it somewhere else, right? So the fight, in part, is a fight about the future, right? So
Yeah.
where is the next fight? What is the next frontier in this?
I might toss it to Kristen on that, because you're right, they can't just pick it up and move it, and I know that they all said we want justice. If they rule in our favor, it just it shows that they're going to take this seriously, and we can be a model community for them actually looking at other communities and addressing these complaints, not ignoring them. So that's what I took away.
Well, a lot of the residents that filed the complaint would tell you that they don't believe the landfill, the facility as it exists today, would be able to prevent the hardship that they went through when the coal ash was being dumped. The company right now is actively pursuing utility companies to dump their coal ash there again.
So it continues on.
It could be a redo, and they want protective measures put in place. They want EPA to force certain protective measures so it doesn't happen again.
All right, Kristen Lombardi from the Center for Public Integrity and Amber Payne of NBC BLK. Thanks for being on Greenhouse.
Thanks.
Thank you.